Welcome. This is Potatoes Gang. And today, chat about a pleasant gentleman, wonderful person if you know him well, but an iconic character, professional character. Aremo Segun Osoba. In many ways, his career as a journalist encapsulates the evolution of modern Nigeria. So he provides us an opportunity to discuss journalism and power as we look at Segun Osoba in the eyes of history. Segun Osoba was one of those young reporters in the early 60s that the legend of legends, Laji Babatunde Jose, hired into the Daily Times. In the course of his career, he was at the, if you will, pivotal reportorial point for a number of historic issues. It was he who ran into the bodies of the Prime Minister, Tafawa Balewa, and Okotie-Eboh after the assassinations following the coup d'etat of January of 1966. He was again opportune to be in the right place when Suka Buka Dimka and his fellows who plotted the coup, the abortive coup as it turned out, that led to the killing of General Murtala Mohammed, then head of state. And so Osoba was a man of the moment there. He's had a reporting career, he's had a managerial career in journalism. I've seen a few very great, bright moments. One for me that's particularly interesting is how the Herald in faraway Ilorin became a major national newspaper for a season when he went to manage it. And of course, he's managed the Sketch, besides the almighty Daily Times itself. Segun Osoba, in the eyes of history, how does journalism contend with engaged power? And what are the challenges we've had in the evolution of Nigerian history between journalism and power? It'd be appropriate perhaps to start in a conflict kind of situation. Back in those military days, journalism clashed with power as expressed in something enormously unsightly of a state governor, a man who's a very great friend of mine today. On his birthday, young governor, very young governor, in his 20s at the time, on his birthday, a journalist reported something unfavorable, and the journalist's hair was shaved with a bottle for reporting on something unpalatable on the governor's birthday. Amakri, the great Amakri story in River State. How has journalism and power, how have they cohabited in Nigerian history?
Somebody has described as one of the most successful reporters, the one that has moved from being just a reporter to an editor to the manager of newspaper enterprise, like you said, from Herald to Sketch to the almighty.
And by the way, he eventually became a politician and a governor, so he was on the other side. So playing him both ways is an important part of the conversation, yes.
The Akinrogun of Egbaland is somebody I would like to describe as a very street, smart journalist who, like you said, was there at the opportune time. Now, talking about the Dinka coup, it's perhaps not known to many that some of the coup plotters were traced to a place of Rafi Williams' presence in Surulere, in a place called Jotina Hotel.
Ah, we know that place.
And the Muritala Muhammad coup, the Ibrahim Taiwo discovery of his dead body in Kwara, and just to mention a few. It's interesting to note that the verve, the energy that Aremo had way back then, patching, as it were, on the shoulder of giants in the Alhaji Babatunde Joseph, he still carried it up to the present time. He's been able to cut across. I have it on good authority, personal good authority, that his network of friends cut across age, gender, geopolitics, both home and abroad, and he's been able to make and convert this to good use. Haremo Oshoba will tell you that perhaps at the age of 23, 26, under 20, he was one of those very few back in the day that had a telephone in his residence. And with that telephone, he was able to try and get at so many of his contacts. So today, you are talking of the days of internet. Back in the day, the telephone was a connector that would connect you into so many things. And then he had his proverbial typewriter, which he tried to even showcase at his 10th birthday. The typewriter that he used to file in the reports after discovering the bodies of the late Prime Minister, Tafa Balewa and Okutiebo, mile 27 on Lagos Abeokuta Expressway. So it's been like that, being at the right place and at the right time.
That's having a reporter's nose for news, as they say.
Yeah. He claims, and rightly so, that the school on the discovery of the bodies of the Prime Minister was just one of many that he participated in. Now, like Alaji Jose, he now was able to mentor and train quite a generation of print journalists who today are holding their own now. I like to support your point, and we need to try and see how we draw a nexus. At his birthday, he got a beautifully crafted letter from the then President and Head of State of Nigeria, Ibrahim Babangida, done on 2 pages, followed by the one from the President of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, extolling him to high levels. And like you rightly said, that he's been in the different epochs, which he eventually now was able to capture in that book, autobiography, Battle Lines, Adventure of Journalism and Politics. I think more than most, Segun Osoba has been able to prove that from the pen-pushing profession, that is journalism, you can get to the heights, not just in politics, but in always.
I think that there has been always an interesting nexus between journalism and power in Nigeria. If you go back to the colonial era, many of the nationalists were journalists at some point in their careers. Yes, Chief Obafemi Awolowo played in journalism, even though he was a lawyer by training. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe was foremost journalist. You moved on to people like Anthony Enauro. Chief Enauro was also a reporter, and so on. So a cadre of journalists have gone.
Don't forget Ayeko.
All of those. Ebenezer Williams. What is interesting about the Osoba experience is that he managed to make the transition into politics, reach certain kinds of positions like governor, and continue to play as a reporter. He and Sam Amuka, interestingly, have a way of continuing to go. Amuka on his part never tried politics, but he went into politics, came back, and continues to play the reporter. Technically speaking, between Amuka and Osoba, we have the oldest working journalist in the country, which is fascinating. But there has always been that fight between journalism and power in the Nigerian experience. Because the role of journalists is to check power. That is never a comfortable relationship. Power needs journalists to project themselves. So you therefore find a crossing of mutual need and mutual antagonism. This crossing, I think, has been remarkably handled by Osoba. In those days, Lagos, when Lagos was Lagos, it was party capital of the world, literally speaking. And the big party boys were the soldiers. And Segun Osoba was in all the nightclubs with them.
Almost like a street boy.
Yes, he was a street,
And was mixing with all the big bands that we had at that time.
Reflecting on the life and times of Segun Osoba before this latest celebration, I think he had personified in his life and career what I would refer to as the key elements that should make a fine journalist. Hard work, extremely long, or let's say unlimited networking capability. He had immense reach. And that's a major asset for a journalist.
What big?
Without being derogatory, he could be referred to in his younger days as a street boy or a man on the roads. He was found everywhere. At nightclub, from Kakadu to Victoria to Ebenezer Obey, Segun Osoba was all over the place. And this boosted his network. One thing that I believe has also assisted his career, and which a lot of current journalists need to take a look at in mirroring the life and times of Osoba, is good mentorship. His life is almost like a duplicate of Alhaji Babatunde Joseph, who mentored Osoba. And it's not surprising that Osoba has written a book. I would believe he still has another book to write on quite a number of unanswered questions in Nigeria's political landscape. His mentor, Alhaji Babatunde Joseph, wrote Walking the Tightrope. But that book was inconclusive. There were still a lot of gaps. I was privileged to read that book and had a chat with Alhaji Joseph on it. And he promised that his second book will answer most of the questions I raised. I want to believe Segun Osoba has answers to most of these questions. And for the sake of Nigeria, he will still need to write another book.
In this particular book, I think he focused a lot more, because of the currency of the subject, on the Nadeko struggle. One in which I was myself active. Partly because there are a lot of people who have told stories. History, success has 1,000 fathers. Everybody's claiming they did this, they did that. In fact, most people have forgotten those who really did the things. They are appropriating history. Even when the June 12th thing was celebrated, when the federal government last year honored Chief Abiola and then and all of that, and I was present, it took the dignity of someone like Chief Osoba to say, what are we talking about? But Utomi is here. Because we were the struggle. But those who have claimed history, I almost forgetting those, and I particularly like to keep mentioning some of those who were at the heart of that struggle, who are even less remembered. At least I get remembered. People like Asuwe Igodalo. Ayo Igodaro. Koinsola Ajayi, Dr. Koin Ajayi, SAN. Tola Moboluri. Desalu, she's now Desalu. She was Babalola back in those days. Extraordinary people who, as professionals, give so much, and only somebody with the dignity of Osoba remembers these things. Let's hold it. Go and listen to people out there and come back, and Mary will take this conversation forward.
When the government is saying that way, it will be reduced. The number of people that are just like together.
The good side of it is that people are getting into the job with good minds and good hearts, and they're really delivering. They're really working. And in the bad aspect of it is that a lot of journalists are sending bad signals on things, and they're changing the narratives of what mostly the leaders do. sometimes you'll see the headlines of the body of the write-up saying a different thing. And we Nigerians are very lazy in reading, so we decide to just judge from the headings, which I think is something that needs to be addressed. The journalists should know that not everything you just change and decide to put what you want.
And we are back. This is still Patito's Gang, and we're talking journalism, power, in the eyes of history through Aremo Segun Osoba, the man who at 80 still plays like a 50-year-old.
One of the things that we should look at as we look into the life of Osoba is that the reality of journalism right now in the country is that a lot of media houses are not even able to pay salaries. You know, journalists are not very comfortable financially, and it's putting a strain on the way we practice the journalism that we practice. You know, back in the days, I mean, like Osoba, I mean, it was a whole lot more lucrative, you know, for those media. But right now, it's not as
What made
it
the
used to
difference?
be.
What changed?
I differ a little bit. Osoba started his career in a very flourishing media organization, Daily Times Group, which was about the biggest, most powerful in Africa in his days.
IPC Group.
But he moved from Daily Times and moved to obscure Herald in Ilorin, a regional state paper that was doing fairly well, and then eventually was moved from Ilorin.
But the point to make is that the Nigerian Herald became a national newspaper while he was there.
And then when he moved from Herald to Sketch, I worked briefly for Sketch, and I knew why I left the Sketch. The Sketch was virtually in a desert. Financially speaking, it was on the flat ground. Osoba left the Herald in Ilorin after making a success of it, came to Ibadan, took over the Sketch, turned it around, and repeated the same feat. So I think the managerial capacity is critical. The current media needs to take a look at some of this, because it turned Herald around, and people are saying, okay, it was just lucky, but it repeated the same thing in Daily Sketch that was in a worse financial situation than the Herald.
If the truth is going to
And eventually, he got back to Daily Times, this time around, not as editor, that led to his exit, but as managing director of Daily Times. And Times was about dying, he gave it new life again.
truth must be told, and that goes to the heart of Mary's point. I can almost certainly tell you, even back then, there was some creative thinking, because I know the Daily Times that we had then, they had quite a number of tables. Somebody thought through those processes, and they had different great lines that were supporting
Magazine groups.
What we call that is entrepreneurship. So, in journalism, or as a journalist media organization, we must embrace entrepreneurship to be able to think out of the box. Yes, I quite appreciate. Back in the day, I also remember at one point in time, Segun Osoba was at the forefront of the ban and unban of newsprint, fighting and using all his, pulling those stops to try and ensure that his profession is well protected. But unfortunately, because of policy, somersault.
Now, just put it in context, because a lot of young people who probably are listening there, I don't understand what you mean by ban and unban newsprint. There was a time when foreign exchange was very scarce, and newspapers could not access enough foreign exchange to bring newsprint into the country. Newsprint was gold, and there were all kinds of political issues with newsprint. Who brought it in? Did Abiola bring in? Did this happen? And it was a critical part of the power equation in journalism in Nigeria.
And one of the policy trusts then was to set up Okuiboku, which, like many of policy trusts, failed on the altar of
two of them.
Yes,
In
Iwope. And at the end of the day, they all fell under the influence of corruption, no vision, and what have you. But the The point that we are making here is that Segun Osoba, through all those thick and thin, made sure that the profession, the Association Nigerian of Journalists and all that kind of stuff, they were able to hold their own. I also like to believe that because of the foray of the likes of Osoba, now find a lot of journalists now being appointed as SA to governors, SA to, and was able to now, get their profiles up there. Points I'm making is that, look, ideas should not be static. Usually in entrepreneurship, when you meet,
Well, in my view, I think a number of things have affected journalism and the economics of journalism.
Yes.
Of course, a very important part of it is the fact that we have a generation that's not reading. So people read far less than used to be the case. A generation that's gone significantly electronic and get more of their information from electronic media, whether it's social or new media, as they call it, or television. But a very critical part of it was that at a point in our history, there was too much of public sector involvement in the media. Governments acquired most of those newspapers. The great story of how the federal government under Murtala got into the Daily Times was part of the end of economic journalism in Nigeria, or economics of journalism in Nigeria, because it was a personal thing for Murtala Mohammed to even scores with Alhaji Batunde Jose, and that led to government literal takeover of the Daily Times. And since then, the economic structure of journalism began to change with government ownership. What is the interest really there? It's just for the governor or the whoever to project himself and those kinds of things. People began to lose interest.
I really don't think government should have any business owning any media.
My first
really.
academic article.
If you want to do it the right way, I don't think so.
My first academic publication was actually on that subject back in 1980 in a Dutch journal. The media, as we had it under the military, went down many, many steps because of ownership.
Yes.
With their ownership, the credibility of media became questionable, so people were less inclined to reading. We made the point in our private conversation here today about the circulation of the Sunday Times at a point in time was the highest circulating newspaper on the continent of Africa. Mm-hmm. 1.2 million, 1.5 million. Today, all the newspapers in Nigeria put together are not circulating 1/10 of that. So,
apart from ownership, I know a paradigm shift happened whereby from tabloids, then you started going to news magazines, the daily givers of this world appeared on the surface and stuff like that. That had nothing to do with government intervention. Yeah. I put it clearly.
Just like any other. By the way, to deal with that story properly, Newswatch as a commercial venture grew dramatically, was growing until their confrontation with power led to the assassination of Dele Giwa.
And then the emergence of Tel magazine. Point I'm making is, yes, government intervention can come from ownership, can also come from muzzling, trying to muzzle, and the kind of intercourse I get to find between editors and government.
Interesting opportunity to bring this, as we're coming to a close, to bring this. In those days, long before Newswatch and Co., I did National Youth Service with one of the best-known magazines, one of the first in Nigeria, news magazines, New Breed. New Breed. Oglano Drive, 35 Oglano Drive. Chris Okolie. How did that end? The Obasanjo government banned it in 1978. So these kinds of aspects of our history are responsible for where journalism is in Nigeria today. We'll see you next week.